Saint Germain is a man who knows everything and who never dies. Voltaire. The man we're going to talk about today is a real historical figure surrounded by so much intrigue, talent, and mystery that there is a supernatural aura that surrounds him. He seemed to be extremely talented at everything he did, had a wealth of knowledge that astounded people, and was welcomed by nobility and royalty alike. He might actually be the most fascinating man to live in the last 500 years. The man known to us as Count of Saint Germain seemingly popped into existence without record. It is believed he was born in the late 1600s to early 1700s, but no one is certain as where the Count was from. One might think an accent might betray him or his name might give it away, but the fact is that he used many different titles and names throughout his lifetime, each seemingly different depending on where in Europe he was mingling. He went to great lengths to protect his identity, and claims about his origin ranged from Spain, Portugal, Italy, and even Transylvania. Everyone had a theory, and apparently they all held some weight. The fact that Saint Germain spoke several European languages fluently with no discernible accent on many of them only kept his origins hidden in mystery all the more. He was noted to have mastery over Spanish and Portuguese while also being skilled in speaking French, Italian, Dutch, Russian, and Swedish. He also understood both Polish and English. We can pick up in the late 1730s, however, where the Count found himself in high society circles all across Europe. From many letters, political documents, and other historical recordings, we know that nobility and royalty were absolutely charmed by the man and dumbstruck by his seemingly limitless talents. From historical records, it seems to be agreed that Saint Germain had no equal as a conversationalist and had uncanny historical knowledge. It was said that Saint Germain told historical accounts as though he had witnessed them himself, and apparently he may have hinted that rumor might have actually been true. And the man had no limit to his talents at fascinating people in other ways as well. Count Saint Germain was known as a very capable painter and was nearly flawless on the violin. He was also very proficient on the harpsichord and even composed his own musical works along with collaborating with other notable musicians of the time. Posted online, you can see the list of the many sonatas, arias, songs, and violin pieces he wrote. Saint Germain was definitely the most talented and interesting person of his time, and that's hard to argue. His talent and charisma set him apart from anyone else. But now we'll talk about some skills he may have had that are less verifiable, but are just as much a part of his legend as the rest. So the Count was recorded to have spent 5 years in Persia from 1737 to 1742, living at the court of the Persian Shah. During this time, it's said that he engaged in a deep study of alchemy and jewel crafting, where he mastered removing imperfections from diamonds. One such famous story involving the Count using these prodigious skills came from an anecdote recorded by Madame du Hausset, a maid and personal confidant of the king's mistress, Madame de Pompadour. In the late 1740s, Saint Germain was living at the French court of King Louis XV of France, and according to Madame du Hausset's story, the king had learned of the Count's skills and asked Saint Germain to fix the imperfection in a diamond he had, which would nearly double its value. The Count agreed, and after a month returned to the king with the diamond free of imperfections. Stories of his alchemical prowess thrived as well, besides Saint Germain himself supposedly claiming to be at least 300 years old and intimating that he was present for historical events that happened hundreds of years before his time. People also noted some odd things about the Count. Several people made mention that the Count seemingly never ate any food but just sipped on water. This gave people the impression that the Count may have been able to create an elixir of longevity or even an alchemy stone of immortality. He also displayed great amounts of wealth, wearing expensive jewels and fine clothing while bestowing costly gifts upon favored friends. This seemingly unending wealth gave rise to rumors that the Count used alchemy to transmute metals into gold. According to Giacomo Casanova, who met the Count in 1757, yes, that Casanova, Saint Germain apparently admitted to knowing the secret to universal medicine and to having mastery over nature. The Count of Saint Germain would continue to travel for the rest of his life, with notable stops in England and countries that are modernly known as India, Russia, Germany, and Bavaria, where he mingled with royalty and nobility. But Saint Germain had his detractors. Even though Casanova conceded Saint Germain was an astonishing man, he thought the Count was an eccentric liar. And Voltaire's famous quote about Saint Germain might have been intended as sarcasm due to the Count's claims of longevity and alchemical astuteness. In fact, Voltaire nicknamed Saint Germain the Wonder Man, and his famous quote is actually, "The Wonder Man is a man who knows everything and who never dies." The nickname as well might have been intended as a sarcastic jab at Saint Germain. But despite the controversy surrounding his perceived alchemical skills, Saint Germain was incredibly gifted in a considerable amount of areas and lived a life that left a lasting impact on peasants, artisans, nobles, and kings. And if one would think that with his supposed death in 1784 that his impact would stop, one would be very wrong. Even after his supposed death, people came forward to say they saw the Count alive and well. Others, while accepting his death as true, describe him as an ascended master that reincarnates on this world again and again. Some of these people have even worked backwards on the timeline, claiming knowledge of his previous incarnations. Yet regardless of what you believe he's doing now, he lived a life of such wonder that you could really pause a moment and legitimately wonder if the Count of Saint Germain just might have been a person who tapped into some piece of our reality that few ever do. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below.